In 1980, at the University of Tennessee football game here, I'm sitting out in the stands as president of the Alumni Association, and a state trooper tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Governor Fob James wants you to come to a house over in Opelika tonight at 6:30. Will you be there?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I showed up over in Opelika at 6:30, and there were 3 trustees there, and Fob said, "We're firing the football coach at the end of the year, and I have talked to Vince Dooley, the head coach at Georgia, and he's agreed to come." Auburn University formed this committee. It was Mike McCartney, it was Morris Savage, it was John Denson, and myself. I still actually have the document that Coach Dooley signed with me. He'd make $100,000 a year to be the head coach at Auburn. But what happened was, after he signed that agreement, when in Birmingham, he got in a plane and flew down to Tampa, and then between Tampa and Athens, Georgia, he was offered a big raise at Georgia, and they promised him within the next year he'd be made athletic director. So that's when we decided we had to go out and find another head football coach. We interviewed Jackie Sherrill, who at that time was a very successful head coach at Pittsburgh. We interviewed Bobby Bowden, who was just beginning to have success at Florida State. And we interviewed Pat Dye. Pat Dye was at Wyoming at the time and had not signed a contract. He'd only been there a year. And so Pat was calling me almost every night saying, "They're giving me an ultimatum out here. If I don't sign the contract, I'm gone." And I said, "Well, Pat, I can't tell you you're going to get the job. I believe you're going to get the job." The committee recommended to the board that Pat Dye be hired, and he was hired. And that was, I think, the beginning of turning around Auburn football. 1982, we beat Alabama for the first time. You got to understand that from the 40s into the 70s, Auburn was considered second rate. The Alabama people looked down on us, called us the Cow College, and they had beaten us 10 straight years. So Pat Dye comes in the second year he's here, he beats Bear Bryant, and that was just a great relief and a great start for Auburn. We beat again in 83. We had 2 close losses in 84 and 85, and then in 86, we beat them for the next 4 straight years. So during that period of time, everything was changing at Auburn. All of our colleges began to really be good. The business college began to grow. Auburn was moving in the right direction. It became the most popular student-wise university to come to Auburn and not to Alabama. And the Alabama people didn't like that. We discussed on the Board of Trustees. We had moved all of our games to home and home. All the big rivals were coming except to Alabama. So we formed a committee on the Board of Trustees. It was myself, Mike McCartney, and Morris Savage. And we contacted the Alabama people that the year that it was going to be our first year as a home team, it was going to be played in Auburn. So we agreed to have a meeting between the 2 committees. There was Mr. Red Blunt, who was chair of the Alabama Board of Trustees, Tom Rask, Mr. Bromberg. We were scheduled to meet at the Capital City Club in downtown Montgomery. Our group met at my office, and they asked me to be the lead spokesman, I guess because I was young and I was crazy. So we get over at 4 o'clock, and of course, Alabama's not there. I told my 2 friends, I said, that's just a negotiation tactic. They're trying to intimidate us. So about 4:30, Mr. Blunt comes in with his folks. And you got to understand now, Mr. Blunt was probably one of the wealthiest people in the state of Alabama. And when they came in and sat down, the first thing Mr. Blunt said to us was, the University of Alabama will never come to Auburn and play a football game. And so I looked across at Mr. Blunt and I said, with all due respect to you, sir, in 1989, Auburn is going to be waiting in Jordan-Hare Stadium. If y'all show up, it's going to be a hell of a football game. But if you don't, you're going to forfeit the game. And we got up and left the meeting. They yelled and they screamed, and the city of Birmingham threatened us. The president of Alabama Power Company wrote us a letter and said they were going to stop all support. I said, you call the president of Alabama Power and you tell him you'll tear up that letter if you wanted to. If not, we're going to publish it in every newspaper in the state. We didn't hear another word out of him. But guess what? 1989, the game was moved there. We won the game. And then they moved it to Tuscaloosa 4 or 5 years later. So that got that changed. In the 60s and 70s, the only building that was built at Auburn University was the Haley Center. We would not push in Auburn University for its strengths. We really didn't have a business school to speak of. They wanted to make Auburn into the Yale of the South, and that just wasn't going to work. And so we determined in the late 1980s, College of Business is going to be one of the futures for Auburn University. So finally, I said at a Board of Trustees meeting, we're not going to start another building until we break ground on the new College of Business. And I insisted because we needed classrooms. The university is ultimately judged by the product they put out, and the product they put out is our students. So if we're putting out good students, that means we're successful. My mother and father met here. They married while my father was working for Auburn University. So I have always loved Auburn University. It's meant a lot to me and my family. I've had a son and a daughter graduate here. I've got grandkids that are coming here. I think Auburn University is a great place. It's a real service. It's a real asset to the state of Alabama. It's a real asset to the United States of America, and we should all be proud of Auburn. And as long as the Auburn people are pulling together and working for what's best for Auburn University, we'll succeed. Thank you very much. This is an unexpected honor here. See, Danielle, you said I've got 30 minutes, is that right? No. Oh, it was 3 minutes, okay. I want to commend the selection committee, the Alumni Association on establishing this very important event. I'd like to thank Jerry Smith, Sam Franklin, John Ed Matheson, Jay Jacobs, Wayne Smith, John Wagner, Tim Jackson, and many others who worked hard to make this recognition to me possible. My father, Ed Lowder, was born and raised in a little rural town in South Alabama named Colonial. That's Cortelyu. Now, when you're growing up, you have to say, where your parents are from, and boy, that really caused a lot of questions, Colonial, Alabama. Now, another story, I was actually born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, but we won't go into that. So, my grandfather worked in a sawmill in nearby Leroy, Alabama. And in the 1920s and 1930s in that part of the state, there wasn't any paved highways down there. And to do any kind of shopping, you had to travel down the road south to Mobile. And all those roads were gravel roads. And as you know, in South Alabama, it rains all the time. It just makes driving that much harder. My grandfather, he owned an old Ford Model A sedan. So every Saturday morning, when he was getting ready to drive to Mobile, he'd go around and invite all of his buddies from the sawmill to ride with him. Now, my grandmother was a tough old bird, and she was a pillar of the local Methodist church. And she'd always say to my grandfather, why do you always take those lazy old friends of yours with you? And my grandfather would say, it's like this, it always rains. The road gets muddy, and I might slide into a ditch, and if I do, I'm going to need some friends to help me get out of that ditch and get back on the road. Well, that's the way it is in life. You need friends, you need associates with you when hard times come, and they come in everybody's life to get back on the road. Tonight, this room is full of friends and associates who have helped me along this travel of life. My family is sitting at the table in front of me here. My daughter, Catherine, and her 3 children, Robert, James, and Olivia. My son, Brian, and his wife, Kristen, and their daughter, Reagan. My wife, Charlotte, who has stood with me in the good times and the hard times, and she's always been the same, no matter what happens. Many men and women have helped me in my 45 years of business, and some of them are no longer with us, and I miss them very much. I've got seated at 2 tables here tonight, some of those that work right by my side. Ronnie Joe Wynn, that's what we called him in college, Ronnie Joe. Ronnie Joe Wynn was an Auburn classmate of mine. He came and joined me in 1968 when we only had 2 employees. We had an office and a hall closet, but we had dreams of things we might do. And he worked with me all those years after. I've got a table of ladies back over here, and some of them spilled over another table. Then one man, sitting there, one man who worked with me and played an important part of making those dreams come true, and I'm indebted to them. Now, they're really, the ladies back there, several of them are wondering, what am I going to say next? Because they wrote all my speeches, So, and of course, that was a time when females were not supposed to be in leadership roles, but that's another story. I had the honor of serving as president of the Auburn Alumni Association for 2 years, from 1979 to 1981. Those were memorable years. When I was president of the Alumni Association, the president got fired, the athletic director got fired, the head football coach got fired, and the basketball coach got fired. So those were some exciting times. But we're blessed with many friends that served. I was on the Board of Trustees for 29 years, and everybody knows that was too long. But some of the people that served with me are here tonight. Jimmy Rain, we're honoring 2 tonight. Mike McCartney, my dear friend, who, when I went on the board in 1983, was like a big brother to me. We've got John Blackwell's here tonight. Charles McCreary is going to be honored in a few minutes. Erlen McWhorter, who's not here tonight with us, but he's here with us in spirit. But many others that worked with me on the Board of Trustees. Jay, are you going to get up and blink the lights? Jay Googe always blinks the lights when it gets to be at 8. It's already past 8. And so, got 2 presidents here that I served with, Ed Richardson and Jay Googe. They're good men. I enjoyed working with them, and we appreciate all. Now we've got a really good president again with Chris Roberts, and I'm looking forward to working with him. Again, this is a very special honor, and I really appreciate this very much. I appreciate you thinking and honoring me in this way. Let us always remember here at Auburn University, when we drink the water, let's not forget those that dug the well. Thank you.